Welcome to Design Bites. We're going to pack a lot of information here into a 15-minute segment for everyone. Just remember that NAHB has a disclaimer. This will be posted so that you can read that later at your convenience. And my name is Chris Moore. I am the DTJ CEO and Director of Planning, and I have been practicing in the residential and community design realm since the late 1990s. So excited to share with you some of the things that I've learned and some of the new trends that are happening today. We're going to talk about parklets and dog walkers wanted. It's an interesting twist on as you walk through the neighborhoods that you may live in or think about the ones that you're going to have new homes built in. It's really important to take a step back and think about it from the pedestrian standpoint. And so we're going to talk about designing character-filled streetscapes and what that means. Really what we have to do moving forward is think about overcoming some of the conventional thinking for character-filled streetscapes. We've approached it one way for the past several decades, and so challenging that thinking is really important. So we have to think about the house. We're not going to get into that a lot today. That'll be another program, but we're going to focus on the yard, the street, and the neighborhood. And there's some things that we've learned coming out of 2020, and I want to highlight those, a couple of those elements. You'll see those in orange as we move through this presentation. Those are critical must-haves. These are things that may have been trends prior to 2020, but we've realized the importance of those, and we need to find ways to incorporate those into our neighborhoods. So overcoming conventional practices. We're going to start with the yard. We can't think about the yard anymore as traditional back, front, and side. Those are old ways to think about outdoor living spaces. We need to find outdoor living space. We need to incorporate those within our floor plans and really celebrate those within our streetscapes. Often that comes with a reduction of parking, whether that's covered parking, dedicated parking, or street parking. And then flexible space. We've learned a lot about flexible space here within the past year and the importance of that, but really understanding that those spaces, specifically those outdoor spaces, need to be well designed. And so if you take a step back, if you think about this in a little bit more of a diagrammatic form, we're really looking at where those outdoor spaces occur, where they need to occur. And you see those landing in different spots along the floor plan. They may be more towards the front of the house, they may be along the side, tucked in back, a combination of those. And so those outdoor spaces actually lend themselves to interesting floor plans, one, but second, interesting spaces in terms of how it relates to the street. So we're seeing it both from the inside, from a livability standpoint, and from the outside. These corner outdoor spaces work great on a corner lot. They really add interest to the elevation. They create some articulation. They let a lot more light in to that home. And so the location of that space is really important. And then you extrapolate that into the streetscape itself. So again, if you're walking your dog or taking a stroll with your family, as you walk along that street and as you're thinking about these different outdoor living environments for the individual, you're seeing those happen in different places along the street. You're getting a peek into that private space, but that private space is in fact that really private. And so that again becomes very flexible. It becomes very interesting for that individual to walk along that sidewalk. And we're exploring some new things with single family. We're exploring how an ADU unit, so an accessible dwelling unit in new construction, in a residential community in the suburbs, may act as a second living quarters. It could be an in-law suite, it could be a rentable space. But again, how that outdoor space, how that entrance greets the street, comes along the sidewalk, adds that interest in that intrigue. It's no longer this kind of flat space that you turn the corner of a house. It's really a second living space It adds value. It adds potential rental income for those individuals. And it adds what I would hope to be an accelerated sales pace for your projects. So let's jump to the street. Let's talk about how we challenge conventional practices in that arena. So we're talking about unique streets. Each street that is located within the neighborhood doesn't have to be the same. You can vary setbacks. You can get some different product happening, some different housing types happening on those streets. And we can think about unconventional building placement. One of the interesting things that happened last year, if you want to call it interesting, was we started to see flexible streets. Well, if you went out to a restaurant or a bistro or a coffee shop, that coffee shop spilled out into the sidewalk. It spilled out into the parking lot. It had seats, it had covered areas. We learned how to flex that space. And I think we can learn a lesson from that. I think there's opportunities within our residential neighborhoods to incorporate a flexible street. And I'll talk a little bit about what that means. Find an opportunity to be unique. Find an opportunity to get a little bit of interest into that streetscape. This is a rectangular parcel. We could get really efficient with this layout of townhomes or single family homes, but we found a way to twist the grid just a little bit, add that little square footage of open space right there in the middle. And what happened is that became a gathering space. So as we're increasing with density throughout our neighborhoods, it's really important to provide relief. It's really important to create a foreground for that streetscape so that, one, people can live on that. You can walk your dog. There may be a playground in that area. There may be benches. It's an opportunity for individuals to come out of their home office and take a breath of fresh air in that environment. So create something quirky. Think about that little odd place that happens within your neighborhood. And if we think about product related to that, we're really trying to develop product that creates some animation, some articulation along that street scene. We're creating attached product that actually lives and looks like single family, looks like little cottages, just attached at the garage. What happens if you move that garage to the back? Well, now you've created a different street scene. You've created more interest as you walk that neighborhood. You've created a little bit more of a transition, and you've created private space in back. So just playing with where that garage lands affects the street and affects how that looks. Planners for a long time have been trying to narrow streets. If you work with a good planner, one of the first challenges they'll probably make in a neighborhood or with a conventional city is, how can we get those streets narrower? Well, we've pushed it quite far, and what's happened here within the past couple of years, we figured out how to get rid of that street. That creates more density, creates more value for you, and it also creates more premiums for those individual homes. So what you see here is 60% of those solid dots have entrances to their homes that are located off the street. They're actually located on open space. Maybe it's a little pocket park on the side. Maybe it's a linear open space that leads from the street to the front door. Maybe it's a walkway in the back. That adds value, it adds interest. And throughout the street, throughout the neighborhood itself, you create these little refuges. They don't have to be highly amenitized. They don't necessarily have to have a lot of bells and whistles put in them. You don't have to fill them up with a lot of amenities. They're just places for people to gather, throw the Frisbee with the kids, walk the dog, and create that variety and that interest throughout the neighborhood. The other part that's important as you're thinking about the street is you may be dealing with different housing types. On the upper part of the slide, you're seeing single family cottages. On the right-hand side, you're seeing attached product. And it's reversed on the lower piece of that. Thinking about massing, thinking about articulation, thinking about how those relate to one another along the street is really important. We talk about street music. spend as much time designing the street as you spend designing the home itself. And then how that relates in terms of massing as it works into 3-story or 2-story housing types, and how that relates to a linear open space along the way. And then even with little infill pieces of ground, we're finding ways to activate that street. It's not turning our back. It's not necessarily just and only creating a front porch. It's thinking about that, what I call in-between space. It's the space between the back of the sidewalk and the front of the home. What happens in that in-between space? It's often left over. It's not necessarily designed all the time, but it should be. That is a critical transition that can really add value, add interest, and differentiate your product and differentiate your community. Finally, we'll jump to the neighborhood. And again, we have to continue to think about how to overcome conventional mindset and conventional practices. So we need to challenge density. You often get pushback from neighborhood groups. You often get pushback from maybe a city that is new to density, but continue to challenge it. There's ways to overcome maybe what a perceived density might be. Right size the open space. Doesn't always have to be big. We'll talk about how to make really good use out of really small open space. And then make sure that that open space serves multiple purposes. So must-haves, pocket open space, and smaller spaces for flexible amenities. So within this small neighborhood, you're seeing a variety of things. You're seeing neighborhood parks, one little neighborhood park serving a significant number of homes. You're seeing 2 pocket parks there in orange. Those really provide relief as you're driving through the community or walking through the community. Again, those are pause points. Those are not necessarily highly amenitized. May have some paths, may have some benches, may have a kind of an informal type of playground activity, but it kind of backs the homes up off of the street, so you're not always providing a standard offset and things feel the same. That's one way to overcome density. And then the linear connections. That's ways to get rid of streets and provide different opportunities for residents to live within a different environment. And make sure that you can double up on the use or triple up on the use. You're setting aside that land. Let's get some value out of that. Let's think about stormwater management and bioswales and rain gardens. Let's step away from the conventional practice of putting that detention basin out on the corner and ignoring it. Will this cost more? Yes. But will you get more value out of it and a more pleasurable place to live? Absolutely. Proven price increase from amenitizing these areas and distributing stormwater throughout the site. Maximize that product variety. Think about mixing character. One of the opportunities that presented itself in an infill neighborhood was that this needed to feel like it grew over time, like it happened over time. And so the builder and developer hired many architects, 3 architects, to design multiple products, each product having a variety of architectural character. What that did is it worked seamlessly into some of the turn of the century neighborhoods that were surrounding this site. It felt like a new version of something that had developed over time. And with that variety of architecture, a lot of thought put into how they live against the sidewalk, how they live against the open space, what that massing is, how they work from one to another, how that open space can happen on multiple levels throughout the community. And that works not only in an infill urban neighborhood, but in a suburban location as well, at a high-end marketplace. Thinking about a mix of product and just that one little green space, that happens that unifies this complete neighborhood. These were all front-loaded products, very tight, 26 foot wide. And so we had to give a lot of thought within this market segment. What's interesting on the street scene? How do you get to the home? How do you integrate and match product together so that you do get a varied street scene throughout the community? So takeaway number one, in order to succeed in developing character-filled streetscapes, let's continue to challenge those conventional practices, and let's clearly communicate the benefits to the buyers. Think about the house, definitely think about the yard, the street, and the neighborhood. And then takeaway number two, we learned some things last year. Let's take those forward. Let's incorporate those must-haves into ways that are flexible and into ways that provide opportunities for solutions to create a very unique and walkable street scene. So appreciate your time. Thank you very much. I'd be happy to talk to you. You can contact me at seymour@dtjdesign.com. Have a good day.
Thank you, Chris, for joining us today. Today's webinar was recorded and will be available on demand at nahb.org in just a few days. In the meantime, if you have any questions or feedback, please send it to nahblearning@nahb.org. Stick around after we end the event for a brief survey on how we did today. Thank you all for joining us. That concludes today's Design Bite. We'll see you next time for the next installment in the series on April 15th, where we discuss outdoor spaces. Have a great day, everyone.